Hey, Destiny.
Hey Lee, how are you?
I'm good. And this is really exciting. I actually feel like I am like commentating on the election. Like I
I
am on
know.
but it's a little different.
Yeah, I'm super excited as well, Lee. I feel very happy and confident to be doing something other than the norm that I would usually be doing on election night, being at a watch party or, watching the numbers come in from the poll. But to be as I would say my friends of the PCUSA to really have an in-depth conversation with young adults is exciting because you don't really hear that narrative on election night.
That's true. Yeah, and just for everybody watching, this is a different election coverage. We don't have the maps that are absolutely stressful, like will make your heart just like about to beat out of your chest. We don't have, we're not going to like electoral college things. We're not going to anything like that. But we are going to discuss the election in the lens of faith and justice. And we have to have a disclaimer. Am I right, Destiny?
Yes, you're right, Lee. You're correct.
We have to have a disclaimer. We do not endorse candidates. We do not endorse political parties. We don't do any of that
We are
on this show.
nonpartisan.
We are a nonpartisan show. All we do is talk about the good news of the gospel, whatever that is in scripture, that is there, and that is what we do, and that's how we live our lives, and that's how we're going to talk about these issues that are really coming up during this election, no matter where you sit on the political spectrum. So we wanted to say that, and that this is a space where we're going to talk about what's going to happen next, because as we all know, Destiny, this election is not going to be a cure-all. It's really
Mhm.
not. And we have to have the discussions and keep the conversation moving forward even in these times, because it's not going to cure everything. So shall we get started with our night?
Yes, Lee, let's bring on our friends.
Yeah, we're going to bring on our friends for a young adult discussion. So let us welcome our guest for this evening. Welcome, y'all.
Yay!
How is everyone?
Doing
Lee
well.
and I always start with check-ins. That's why we
Yeah,
ask.
Yeah.
check-ins,
With
because
check-ins.
it's a very stressful time. So how
Yeah.
is everybody doing?
I'm good.
How
It was
about,
a beautiful fall
oh,
day in Georgia. It was just cold enough. I got to see my god baby. So all is right with my world right now.
That's good. And Gene, how are things there with you?
everything is okay. I am doing what it takes to make sure that I'm staying sane and mentally and emotionally healthy in these crazy times. But all is well with my family. Thanks for asking.
And Christian?
All is well in central Illinois. We're enjoying a warmer weather this week, so we're having a great time.
Awesome. And Jenny, how are you doing?
Good. I woke up at like 7 in the morning and I watching the news since then. It's 11 hours and I waiting for what is happening in all the states. Right now I in Maryland and I participate from here.
Awesome. Well, welcome, y'all. It's really good to have you. And it's really good to just have this conversation, about the election, in more of an issue-based discussion. So, I think starting out this conversation in just how we're feeling right now. I shared with our guest that I had to go to the doctor the other week because I thought I was having like some heart trouble, but when it really was like anxiety. And with everything going on, I think we're all feeling that right now. Like we're feeling so much like anxiety, not only with the pandemic, but with this election and with everything that's happening, I think it is really important for us to talk about. So I wonder, like, moving forward, how will we really discuss and take on these issues of mental health that are coming out of this? Because there's so much going on right now that people are, like, mentally, and we can even say spiritually, people are really suffering right now. So I wonder what y'all think about that.
And before the first person answers that question, can you just, introduce yourself? Let people know where you're watching the election at tonight. So your name, your city, and just a little bit about your faith context. And of course, answer Lee's mental health question.
Well, always so polite. Nobody wants to go first.
I thought we were doing it in order,
I'm
so I thought you were going first, Mel.
Oh, we're just gonna go. We'll just kind of go around like that.
Yep.
So I'll start then. Melva, Mel. I am the third anchor on Just Talk. I'm like the Gale, when Oprah sometimes brings Gale on, I'm Destiny's Gale. In Georgia, watching the election, was serving as your 224th General Assembly Hands and Feet Fellow. And I think somebody said it even at the start of the pandemic, and it was on CBS Sunday Morning the other day, that mental health since the pandemic has been like a hot topic, or there's been an increase in just people being aware or needing mental health professionals, to the point that there's like backlog and wait lists, and people who had counselors but kind of put them on the side are like going back and saying, hey, remember me, and even for me, I saw that, like the stress of trying to figure out what's happening with General Assembly, with my job, with just life in general, like knowing I needed mental health, and then like taking the time to actually stop, go through the list of directories, call people, and set it up. And it's made a world of difference. But I think, and I love seeing churches now that say you can believe in God and go to a therapist, because I think that is the message, and that is the message going forth. Like, your spirituality is not void of seeking professional mental health.
Hey everybody, I am Gene Burke, and I am from Philadelphia, where bad things happen. Just want to put that out there. And I work as the director of fundraising and outreach at the Commonplace in Philadelphia. I guess as far as mental health is concerned, I have to be honest, that I have one of the things that really get me upset is watching the news, and just especially around political things lately, because there's so much happening, and there's so much negativity, especially surrounding young men and young women being killed by police officers. And there's only so much that you can take in. I am a father of 4 boys, one of which I'm actually showing my age now, is just turned 20 and moved out of town. He's in probably 100 miles away now. So I worry that he's being safe, and that he doesn't encounter any crazy situations with authorities. And he's a really good guy. He's never gotten in trouble a day in his life. But I realized that that's not a thing that has to happen. You don't ever have to be in trouble or do something in this time to find yourself in a potentially perilous situation. So one of the things that I do to maintain my sanity is, of course, I talk to my son every chance I can get. And I turn off the news, because if I continue to watch the news for every little single thing that happens, especially with the most recent thing that's gone on in Philadelphia Philadelphia right now, I would be rage tweeting and rage status and all of that stuff like that. So I just try to stay away from it as much as possible, but just enough so I know what is going on and I'm not completely oblivious.
Jean, I just want to do a follow-up question real quick. And I was going to ask you, was it okay to ask this? But you brought it up. Can you just share a little bit about the current condition of Philadelphia? Not so much around what we see now in the news, but like what led to that mental health? Because we're talking, since this is a mental health question, what is the issue that you're referring to? Because some people might not know. You know, I'm from Pennsylvania, so I was home when that happened. So that has been something that's very heavily talked about in Harrisburg, but the rest of the world, because we are so used to seeing certain things in the news and the media, might just, you know, turn a blind eye because it hasn't had the spotlight like some of the other shootings. What happened in Philadelphia around mental health?
So I would say it's probably more of the same where you hear, or maybe, and I don't want to assume that everyone has heard this from a Black or brown person when it comes to feeling mentally and emotionally exhausted. When you turn on the news and you hear that yet another Black or brown man or woman or child has been killed by a law enforcement officer. But specifically surrounding the young man that was shot and killed by police in West Philadelphia this past week. Someone who was experiencing a mental health crisis, and the authorities, but the ambulance were called to 302 him to make sure that he was okay, to attend to those needs. But instead, police officers showed up, and instead of trying to understand what was going on, he was shot and killed. So mental health in Philadelphia has kind of taken a front and center stage, which I think is very interesting, because I think a lot of times among the Black culture, mental health gets a bad rap, especially within a Black church. It's, you know, I don't need to go see a therapist, and you guys just mentioned, I don't need to see a therapist. I can just go to church, or I can go speak to my pastor, or you can go pray, or we'll pray for you. But I think it's taking a front and center stage, not just because of the frequent and consistent news that is happening, but because of what's going on in Philadelphia now with the most recent shooting in West Philadelphia, the fatal shooting in West Philadelphia, that there you can see that there is a need for not just the authorities to handle these situations the right way, but that mental health is a real issue within the Black community, and that the Black community can use this type of help and this type of resource to help get over what we're going through, not just with trauma, but just mental health issues that people deal with, schizophrenia, whatever it is. That's taken front and center now. So it's from a couple of different angles of, you know, Philadelphians and people across the nation feeling exhausted for what's going on, but also being exacerbated by the fact that someone with a mental health issue who was a person of color being shot and killed by authorities, and trying to figure and navigate through all of that as well.
Thank you, Jean.
You're welcome.
All right, I guess I get to somehow follow that up. All right, my name is Christian Choi. I am currently serving as an associate pastor for family ministry here in Springfield, Illinois, home of Abraham Lincoln. It's been a wonderful time, I think, for us to really think about where we are nationally, since Springfield, Illinois is actually almost smack down in the middle of the continental US. And that we have a history here dealing with racism, especially a lot of people credit Springfield, Illinois as where NAACP was pretty much launched because of the race riot in 1908. So there's a lot of history in this town. And the church that I'm currently serving at happens to be also a polling station for today. So I've been seeing people walking in and out throughout the entire day at this church voting, and which has been a a delight that we already have so many people coming out to vote, that they continue to show up in force and showing up in numbers to really cast their vote, which we can actually make a difference. And I'm actually seeing it where I'm serving, so that's a privilege. There are so many things, Gene, that I think I would love to echo and kind of support you and acknowledge that that is true. I think a lot of things that you talked about in terms of mental health, I think it's not just within Black community. I think it actually is really apparent in many of minority communities. We look at people with mental health as if they're the modern day lepers in the Bible, that we distance ourselves so far and we don't want to reach out and really address their needs sometimes. And if you have it, people feel ashamed about it, and rather than going to seek out help, they really think that it's something we need to hold on to and kind of separate ourselves from it. And like Black communities, I think a lot of Asian American communities are now talking about them, now bringing up the realities of how can church walk with the medical and the scientific communities where we can help those individuals with mental challenges. And I think this is a great time where we really talk about the anxiety levels of the nation. When you saw many states and when you saw the numbers of people who were able to mail in their votes ahead of time, it speaks about how high the anxiety level are in each person's lives. Right? Lee kind of gave us an introduction of how we feel anxiety, and it's showing through our physical symptoms. And one of the ways that we alleviate that is to make a check and say we're done with it. And that number showed tremendously high at this election. So I'm looking forward to more conversations of how we, as a young folks, we look at this lens and say, is this a change? Or are we saying, is this something that it's just one blimp in history and we're going to go back to the way it was? So I'm looking forward to speaking with you for the rest of the evening.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to also introduce Jenny Delgado and talk about a little bit of the situation with mental health and also in the Latino community, because we know that we are a community coming with a lot like indigenous backgrounds, and even people moving to the United States are maybe third generation or second generations, are trying to keep this community involved and have family related, but not everyone feel like is welcome. And this is another different situation here. And for many, many people are the first time they are casting their vote, and they go into a place to make this important decision. In my case, I'm a social psychologist, but also I'm a student in seminary right now, and trying to deal with this pressure to how faith and also mental health is really important, especially with this, we are in a community. I'm being involved with different groups, with the Latino, especially with women who try to really engage in this election and their families. And we was talking about this situation because the stress and people are worried and receiving different messages from different candidates and different stations. CNN in Spanish is totally different from English. And if we hear really well in Spanish, they are really put a lot of, I don't know, like they are talking about be a socialist. One candidate is associated with that kind of idea that people are scared, and that coming to giving more stress. That's different when you see channels in English, and this is something that well, in our community, most of the people are bilingual, and switch channels to one another, imagine the pressure that we have for both sides. And we're receiving one news with different view. And they sometimes very complicated to understand when is the first generation immigrants here and trying to do their best for their kids and do their best for the families. They have more pressure because you need to be successful. When you are immigrant, you carry all these with you. And it's different when you're born in a country, like this is your country. A lot of people need to, show that they are privileged. On the other hand, they have the right to go and vote. And this is something that will be interesting if we can talk from different communities how we are receiving this election, especially when we have 4 years of presidency administration that show what they can offer for the next 4 years. And we have other candidate that is kind of new, and we don't know what can offer in our community.
I like you brought that up because I was actually thinking when we were starting, and I didn't want to put you and Christian on the spot, but even Jean kind of brought it up, and I think there is this. Well, my question in my head was, especially, I had a lot of friends who are like either first or second generation, like Korean, who have that. Like there's a conversation with Korean church, like English or not English, and how things like that play off. Like Jenny just said, like when you're trying to kind of go with the status quo to fit in, but it may cause you to go against the minority aspect or the minority tensions in the country. Because we always see that, like Korean Americans we're taught, some said, they learn too, being a minority is bad. And so if you're one step above being Black, especially in this country, you're closer to success. And so even like Hispanic voters vote sometimes, quote unquote, maybe against their interests because they're trying to become part of what is the status quo. And I think sometimes even for Blacks, like those who have been in the middle class, they say, well, this is my class. These are my issues, but you're still Black, So I think even that's part of mental health. Like you're playing in your mind, like, how do I still be authentic to who I am, but also I don't want to get stuck in this place where that has a system that disadvantages the immigrant and the brown.
Yeah, I would love to follow up on that. And that's really, this is really interesting that we get to talk about that in this way. But I know for sure, in my experience and during this election time, in a Korean American community or Korean immigrant community. So the way I differentiate the two is Korean immigrant community is the people of the parent generation who immigrated here. And Korean American community are those who are either born here or affiliates themselves to a hyphenated identity, meaning that they are both Korean and American, right? So there is a very interesting thing that is happening within the Korean community in the United States where the false information is not being proven wrong. And the language barrier of the first generation or the immigrant generation have been receiving the wrong news. And they think that the false information that has been readily available for many of the candidates, but that is really just going around, especially when it deals with faith, they are all in it. And it doesn't matter what the platform that one of the candidates might be saying. It doesn't matter where they stand. just based on faith alone within the Korean immigrant community has that votes without really thinking about the other necessities. As an immigrant, there are policies that has been shown at our border, right, on the southern border, of the parents being torn from the children, and yet we as people did not translate that enough, and they have been stuck in that mindset. So, yeah, it's this year's votes in the politics have shown that everything can be turned into politics, and that people have been sucked into those misinformation. And I think that's really important to highlight.
Yeah, it is really interesting that that a narrative is that certain things can be, I mean, certain necessities really can be turned into to politicalness. I mean, a mask. We're in the pandemic right now. There was a commercial somewhere that was like a mask that said, "I am not a political object. I am something that protects you and protects your neighbor." Like, I am not a political object. I am literally a scientific thing that is put on your face to protect your neighbor and to protect yourself. And so, like, there is, and that has been all over the map in this election. I mean, and then one of the things that we can talk about too is also healthcare, which I think is a great faith issue. It is I mean, specifically as Christians. I mean, we Christians, if we identify as a Christian, and whoever is watching, if you identify as Christian, we believe that we are made in the image of God, that we believe that God walked with us in a body, like, I mean, like you are seeing right now, a brown body, Palestinian body. That is not a political statement. That is factual. That is what we believe as Christians. That we believe in Jesus, who healed people, who really saw people's bodies that are suffering and healed them, no matter if they had faith or not. There are stories in the Bible that say that this person didn't necessarily believe in Jesus, but Jesus healed them anyway. And so we have a faith that says that, but that's also politicized, especially right now. And no matter the side, no side that is running right now has a universal stance on healthcare. So we don't even have to be partisan about that. So I do think that is an issue too in this election, and how we can speak to the healthcare of people from a faith perspective. And so I wonder about that in your own context, about healthcare and how that influences our decisions in a vote when we are people of faith and that is what we believe. And not necessarily going through, or choosing like a specific side, like that is our faith, if that makes any sense, because things are being political, are labeled as political.
I think it's really interesting, Lee, especially when you look at what has gone on over the course of maybe the last month when it comes to COVID-19, and even the president's kind of bout or stint with it. And I remember he, saying that, he has, gone to the hospital, to Walter Reed, and gotten this, great healthcare, had great doctors and things like that. And they've, both sides have found a way to kind of tie this into the healthcare issue in America. And I think it's interesting because one of the things that I thought about immediately in terms of all of this is that, there remains an imbalance between the people who can afford great healthcare, and then the people who aren't so, lucky or fortunate, rather. I would rather use that word. So I think that becomes a central issue too. And then in terms of faith, you mentioned that the mask was something that was being politicized as well. The flip side of that was, well, I don't need to wear a mask because my faith or God will protect me. I've always been a guy that believed that the God of the universe created these laws, and will most times work within those laws that he created, the system that he put together, um, to help us in whatever way. And I try to think of this in the most basic form, and I think you kind of hit it when you said, we have a human body, and Jesus, when he was on this earth, he healed us in all of our humanness, and whatever that means scientifically, whether we believed or not. And I always like to think about how God is real, whether we believe him or not. It's a fact. He's there. And he gives us several proofs to know that, and there's several ways he reveals himself to us in that way. But healthcare seems in this politicized world also seems to be coming under a faith attack as well, with all of this misinformation too, that if you have faith in God, that if you truly believe, then you could go in this world and not wear a mask and you won't get sick. But we're seeing that's not the case, because again, there's science, and I don't believe that there needs to be the separation of who God is and his power, and then the system that the world runs on and has been running on since God created all of us. So
Gene, I think you hit on something at the end there that's very important to lift up. There's always this one side or narrative around politics and faith. And I think something that Lee and I are trying to do is lift up that different narrative and inviting our friends on election night. So I'm going to pose two questions for you all to think about for the amount of space and time that we have left. And you can answer both or one. But given that there is this such narrative around politics that usually isn't the narrative of the progressive Christian, what is a message that you want people to know tonight about how we move forward on this election night? What is the message of hope? What is the message of reconciliation? What is your message that you want to share? And actually, I lied. I'm only going to ask that one question because I think I wrapped them in a beautiful bow for you to hit on all the spectrums.
It's a big question. You want to start in order? You want to start with Mel? You want to start with
Go, Gail.
Mel?
You got this.
No, okay. I think the message that we all need to hear is that though anything and everything can be politicized, I'm trying to get the good words. We need to come from it from a stance of humanity. Though you can politicize my womanness, my sexuality, my color, I am first a creation of the divine, and the church needs to not be scared to step into a political conversation about the divine, and to remind people that it was first created in God's image, to be in relationship with each other and to God first. And so anything that takes from that our ability and creation's ability to do that is an issue of the church that we need to take a part of and to push, because I know people can twist those words into any way, but the conversation needs to be we are all part of the divine, and how do we maintain the divine, even though we've tried to politicize it and make it something else. Destiny, you left, so you shifted. So, Jenny, we're gonna go that way.
Yeah, yeah.
We were
Jenny,
going this way, so now we're gonna go that way.
Jenny, if you know what you need to say, then you can go. If not, we can just keep the same order that we had before I accidentally exited out of StreamYard.
No, I want to answer, because we are talking a lot about reconciliation, but a lot group of people saying we not even started to be conciliate in the first place. We know we have different groups living together. Even when we say it's a nation, for me, sometimes when I hear the word, it's like, really, we are a nation? Because what I know of, coming from as indigenous descendants, and I feel like we are different groups living together, like we are different, we have different backgrounds, language. Even right now we are speaking English, but English is also a language, European language. We adapted. In the South, we speak all Spanish, but it's also not our language. And sometimes we confuse, if we speak the language of the country, we will feel welcome, but we will find inside different groups who are trying to find out who they really are. I think we are the generation who have that question really in front of our face. And with this pandemic and everything, we have more time. I have more time now for thinking who really my community is. Even if we want to put it in one box, okay, we are from the Latino community, but inside many other groups. I think that the idea of reconciliation is started from ourselves. If we know who we are, we coming from different experience or different ideas of what is a country, put everything together. I think that is the first in the first place, and then the church also can be a really play a role in this. Unfortunately, they decided to be silent for many years, but right now it's impossible to make this or trying to be in that discussion. I think this is the beginning. Depend what happened today or this week with elections, we can be more ready to move forward in this conversation. And we know if whatever the result, maybe we can start for 4 more years or maybe more, waiting to move in these directions, because the truth is one of the candidates to another, they don't want it to anyone have even reclaimed the rights to the memory of their ancestors. It's the African Americans is very clear. I really admire, I learning a lot for the African American community, but also the Native American community or the Asian community have a lot of memories that they bring all this on the table, but we are waiting. Literally today, we are waiting if we will move forward or we will wait.
So for the past 8 months or so, there is one particular scripture that has been sitting with me. And it's Matthew 25, 35. And it says, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it when we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it when we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it when we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Jenny brings up a very potent point um, surrounding community. And what I would like to have people thinking about long after we're done with this discussion is that regardless of who wins tonight or tomorrow or whenever we find out the results to this election, is that it we as a church and as people of faith still have work to do. And if we are really listening to what Jesus is saying here, is that our work involves taking care of our community. That community could look like the community of African Americans or indigenous people or Koreans, but also the community of faith right in your neighborhood. Doing the things that make sure that you are bringing justice to community. That you are, and it doesn't have to mean that you are out at the protest or saying eloquent words on social media. It means simply just doing the work, whatever that means. One of the things, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but one of the things that brings me hope and keeps me sane and brings me peace is knowing that when I am at work, my 9 to 5 has everything to do with making sure that people get resources. That and in this world now and in this environment where we see all sorts of things that are going on, which to me is an attack on our sanity, is an attack on our emotional wellness. One of the things that keeps me centered and sane is the fact that I know that I am doing the work to bring change. And I know that there are presidents and lawmakers who are vying for power and battling against what they think that this country should look like. But in reality, and even narratively, when it comes to our Constitution, the power belongs with us. The power belongs in individual people doing good things to make sure that people can live lives that are productive, that are equitable, to try to strive towards equality, to make sure that people have what they need. So regardless if it's Trump or if it's Biden, the church, we still have work to do. And not to, kind of go back to the Matthew 25 vision, because it's far beyond that. Even in the end of Matthew 25, Jesus says, when you do this for my family, the people who I care about, it's just like you're doing it to me. So I'm comforted by the fact that we do that, and just want to leave that we still have work to do. And if we're following what Jesus says, then we're going to do that work regardless of who's in office.
Jean, I'm so happy that you mentioned that scripture and passage, and I know you didn't intend for it to be this way, but as a denomination, the Presbyterian Church USA really lifts up the Matthew 25 vision. And if you're a congregation out there who is looking to be in partnership with the PCUSA after this election, we invite you to really look at what we believe around Matthew 25, around building congregation vitality, dismantling structural racism, and eradicating systemic poverty, because that is going to be what moves us forward towards reconciliation in this country after this election. And I invite my colleague Lee to say anything around that, if you have something to say. But if not, I will kick it back over to Christian.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing to kind of lift up, because our denomination, I mean, we have taken on this this invitation to really put out there that we are not going to stand for racism and white supremacy, and we're going to deal and dismantle the systems that enable poverty and that enable inequity. And I do think that that is an important thing to lift up, that there are churches in this country, there are denominations in this country, and this is one of the things that Just Talk Live has tried to do, is to create a different narrative for Christianity, to create a different narrative that says that this is not what you are hearing in mainstream, is not necessarily what every Christian thinks. Christians do believe that we are to speak out against racism and white supremacy. Christians do believe that we have to fight against inequality. And because we follow a Savior that did those things, that is what we believe. And that is one of the reasons why we wanted to have this show. And we wanted to have people on to kind of create a different narrative of getting down to the good news and the gospel of Jesus, because that is what we truly believe. And there is a national narrative that is different, and we can't ignore that. We cannot ignore that. And so I do believe that, yeah, the Presbyterian Church is on a right step, and having a Matthew 25 in that is inspired this initiative, that is grounded in Scripture. And it's written. It's in there, y'all. It's in there. I always say, well, I've always been told that the Bible is the best-selling book in the world, but it's the least read. It is the least read. And there is a different narrative out there. And if you're looking for it, it is there, and keep looking for it. But yeah, we'll invite Christian to respond as well.
I think there's a lot of hope within the church. When I see this panel and I speak with a lot of young adults nationally, doing some of the ecumenical work as well as the PCUSA work, and through my own networks of people, I see a lot of passion. And one thing good about our generation is that we actually talk the talk and walk the walk often with our passion. That we have the drive to really speak up for the voiceless. That we have the heart to really lift up those people who are less fortunate, or who has less privilege than we do. We have the ability, in terms of talent, to tackle some of the mounting challenges that is before us. And I think we are at a point where we can make a huge difference if we can come together. And one of the things that a lot of the forefathers of our spiritual times and the old saints who have gone before us have been telling us over and over again, and it is that the time is now to act. That we have the right people to do it, who are passionate enough and zealous for the Lord. For too long, I think we have kind of let our faith be kind of dwindled down to a point where we can be wavered and kind of be pushed around to a bit. But I think many of young adults in our church, as well as many other churches in different denominations, have the solid footing, and that we stand on our cornerstone. And we are willing to put our work exactly where our heart and faith lies. And this allows us to do great things, and not asking somebody else to do the work for us. We're not asking the politicians to do the work for us. We're not asking somebody else to do it, but we ourselves will make changes within our communities. And as we make our changes within our communities, that will snowball into our counties, and then went to the cities, counties, and then to the states, and hopefully nationally, it will make a difference. The way we do it, I think we just practice our fundamentals, right? The greatest commandment that we've been given, and that is to love the Lord first with all our heart, mind, and strength. And then right after that is that we love our neighbors as ourselves, just the way that Jean read in Matthew 25. And what we need to do is simply, we need to just speak up and be present, and that we need to carry the cross. There is no replacement for the cross other than faith and other than genuine love, to do justice, to do kindness, and to share the love of God wherever we go. So I think it's one thing that many other things can be politicized, but our faith, dare not be. And we need to make sure that we shouldn't let that happen, right? That we should not let our faith be taken away into a political realm. Just stand our ground and continue to just share, regardless of what happens. And that's, I think, what we need to do. And that's what's happening in the churches, actually. If you really think about it, our community of faith in every church that we go to, or we zoom into, or we celebrate on web, has been a sanctuary for the last 8 months, right? So if we can make that reality post-pandemic, and if we can make a safe steps to make little changes in our communities in a safe way now, I think that's the best way that we can move forward.
Thank you, Christian. And as some of you may know or may not know, but I know my Gale counterpart knows this, but Just Talk Live is a faith and justice talk show that's geared towards young adults. And Christian, I think you hit on something towards the end there that's really important that I want to lift up and want to talk about. You mentioned county and local elections a little bit. And I know before we went live and got onto this platform, we were having some discussion about how we are hearing the narrative how young adults are not excited about this election or any election. And I wanted to lift up why not only does this election matter, but every election matter. And if you feel so inclined, why is it important as people of faith to engage civically? So we can start the order or go into any other order that you all might feel comfortable doing.
Well, I'll start, and but this was also laid on my heart based on the conversation, and so I'm gonna put a challenge. I don't know if they're watching, but Jackie Taylor or Aisha Brooks Lytle or Gerard Lowry, I'm willing to come and consult and use my resources to really help the churches and the presbytery navigate how to put a plan together. Because I think we join these initiatives like Matthew 25, we get excited and the work gets hard. And sometimes you need someone to help jumpstart. So I'm free, I'm available, and I need my car paid. So it's not a get rich scheme. It's a let me help you. Help me help you. But in terms of Destiny, your question, I think what I'm hearing, and a lot of it is around, especially for young Black people, is we always say, like, so many Black folks died. So many people of color suffered. For you to make a vote. And I think what we get caught up in, and I think this is kind of what I was saying with like second generation or first generation Korean or Latina, you don't really have the choice to not have a choice. And I think the striving to be like dominant culture says, well, I have the right to or not to, blah, blah, blah. Baby, you really don't have no rights that weren't beaten up for, weren't killed, weren't taken and had to. And so I think it is what we're seeing, and what Jenny said, there's a lot of memory that is being erased. There's a lot of history that is not being told. And the more and more we move away from that history and people aren't connected to it, the more they think, we've come so far. I don't have to think about that. Now I have a choice. Baby, People were paying poll taxes when my mom was 10 years old, and that was illegal. My mom ain't that old. I ain't that old. There were things happening when I was still born that was illegal. You know what I'm saying? Like, schools were still being desegregated when I was born. I'm going to be 40 this time next week. Schools were still being desegregated. We have to tell the history. We cannot let the memory of the pain get erased because we want to get ahead.
And Mel, you mentioned a name earlier, Jimmy. Can you just tell us who don't know who Jimmy is? Who's Jimmy?
Jimmy.
Didn't you say Jimmy? No? I thought you referenced Jimmy Hawkins. Sorry.
No.
Maybe
Nope,
I
did
not
but
hear that
Jimmy
correctly.
Hawkins, since you brought him up, brother,
No, we can move on.
runs the DC office.
I thought you referenced Jimmy.
Huh? But for so if you want to learn more about how faith and politics intersect, please reach out to our DC office, and Reverend Jimmy Hawkins will surely let you know and let you know how to get involved.
Thank you, Mel, for that on the spot plug for Office of Public Witness.
That's what Gail do for you, Oprah.
Hey, Jenny, did you want to respond? Did she hear me?
Yeah. Oh,
There we go.
was mute. Yeah, now is a time that we are really waiting and expected, but definitely something that we can do. We are here. It's a generation. Maybe it's different. I don't know, but I think we are the generation that we keep going. We have hope, and also it's maybe bad to say that we will not replace, but we will fill the positions and the work that another generation are maybe don't complete it right now. And I'm really looking forward to learn from them before they're leaving. But I see a lot of leaving without teaching anyone because they don't want to. No one knows what happened in the last decade. It's not only years, like decades, completely. Like they, many people are still in positions that maybe someone new can bring more energy and ideas. But well, this is a generation kind of like we are ready to serve in the church, the community, and I hope we can have the space. Um, and coming from my own experience, being living here like more than a decade, but also like trying to find a place to build my own career, profession, faith. What I see is not a wall. What I see is a lot of people who are in the sit down and in the chairs and participate in the table, and they are not moving. And it's like, okay, when is the time that we can expand the table? I think this is a nice style, like this kind of show. See Destiny and Lee inviting new people, giving us a space that the other people can know we are exist, we are here. Even if we're working in small communities and churches. My churches only have 40 members, like really a small church congregation. But I think these are spaces that give us a voice to express our faith and also our ideas. I think that people not, I think need to be welcome this. This is what the country needs here right now, and I hope people who are watching can really contact us. Mel will have a really good expertise and skills, you know, and a lot of churches don't know how to really put everything in place.
I think for many people who do not identify with or as the dominant culture in America, our history is littered, so to speak, or for lack of a better word, with church serving more than one purpose. One was for spiritual enrichment and encouragement and for worship, but the other was planning, and representation when it came to civic issues, getting together and talking about what the community looks like or what fights that we had to go and fight, what we had to do to make sure that we are represented in our communities and in this nation. So that's for me, that's where they meet. And I think everyone here so far has done a wonderful job of saying that we need to stay engaged in that way. For a community that, and for all of our communities that have experienced oppression and malignment, if that's a word, um, uh, I think it's important that we don't give up the fight that we're in. I think it's important that we continue to be engaged in local, regional, and national elections. I think it's important that we continue to vote people in who represent our interest. I think it's important that we continue to speak truth to power and to current power, because if we don't, like Jenny said, that collective memory that our respective cultures has will be lost and will be swallowed up by what we are seeing now in our society as white supremacy, something that we have to continue to fight against. Will be swallowed by structural and systemic racism. So it is important for us to stay in the fight. It's important for us to continue to do the work on the ground. It's important for us to continue to vote. It's important for us to continue to support candidates who understand what our needs are, who are able to provide resources for our communities. So it's important for people of faith. It's important for our ethnic and racial communities, if you will, to stay in that fight and continue to do that.
I think the meetings like this and the times that we have like this is just the beginning. And we have a lot of work before us. And as we continue to share our narratives and hear other people's narratives, and as we've been sharing all night long, that even within our communities, there are even more communities within it. So as we start hearing all these stories and a testimony, right, a personal testimony, and as church gathers all these people, I think we got great strength and we got a lot of stories to tell to the world. So this is just the beginning. And one of the things that I want to really highlight is that many of our young folks are in different places. And there's this rumor that says the church don't have young folks. Well, we might not be gathering in huge numbers, but the reality is that we are here. And I think we will have a way to gather all those people through virtual means and different means, right? We are definitely going to have a platform for young folks to gather and try to hear their stories as a denomination. And as we do that, I think we'll have a wonderful outcome, a new way of really combating all these themes and issues that we've been talking about all night today. And that we will definitely have a voice and have a faith to stand on to move forward. So I'm still hopeful, and that I'm just so thankful that all of you shared your stories and continue to share the stories with me.
Yeah, and so we're getting close to the ending of our first segment. Now I'll go ahead and say 2 hours is a long time for Destiny and me. This is our first segment. So bear with us if we get a little tired. But
that's not true, Lee. We did 4 hours for the week of action. I feel like we did fine.
Oh yeah, that was a long time. But what I will say is that we're going to give you about 30 seconds for closing remarks. But I also wanted to kind of say, whoever's watching this and whoever will watch this, that I know right now is a tough time. And I even have some problems with members of my family. Politics can really hurt relationships a lot of the time. And I just want to acknowledge that. And I want to say, whoever is watching this, that the core of your beliefs and the things that you believe to be the right move into justice work, that is going to bring a just society, that it will bring tension to relationships. I mean, even Jesus said that parents will be against that parents will be against children, and siblings will be against siblings, and it will happen. And we just want to say that there is a place for you, that you are loved, and that no matter what you're going to, you have us to reach out to. I know that that is real, and I know that that is something that is hard to deal with right now. And especially if you're in college, if you're a young person and you're just now realizing that some of the things you think are very different from what your family thinks, that is really hard. And that is something that is real. But know that there is somebody out there that is praying for you and thinking about you, and you have us to kind of reach out to. And I just wanted to kind of put that out there because that is real. And that is something that is happening right now for a lot of young people. And I don't want anybody to think that they're alone. And so reach out, and you have people that you can talk to. But I did want to allow our guests and our panelists to have some closing statements and have a time to kind of end our time together. And we'll start with Mel, aka Gail, to close us out.
Again, and I said it in jest, but I'm serious. There are people like me who have skills, but I'm willing to help our denomination and our churches. It's time. It's time to stop just talking. It's time to start putting a plan into action. And like Lee said, this outcome will not change anything. But like I was telling someone earlier before we even came on, I think what the change needs to be is that we will now really push to make whoever is in power locally and nationally to recognize the divine and the humanity of all, and to make policies that work, so we can be a united States of America.
Well, we are expected the next hours. How will be the results or days? Definitely praying is something that people think is only we do in the church or before eating or something before going to sleep. I don't know how people have these practices, but definitely it's a good time to meditate, because whatever is coming, also we need to put a lot of efforts and energy in our own life and our families and our community. We need to be ready and to keep going with projects and issues that we are working and interested to make this happen in the country, but also continue with these reflections that a better world is possible and a better country is possible too.
I want to leave you guys the way we came in, talking about your own mental health and mental and emotional health. And that in this time of chaos and division, that one of the most important things you can do is to take care of yourself. Most of you, anyone who's ever been on an airplane, right before you to take off when they're giving you instructions, they'll tell you that in case that there's some cabin pressure change, that you want to put this oxygen mask on, it's not going to inflate. And if there's someone who's sitting next to you who can't do it, you put it on first and then you help them, because you can't draw from an empty well if you are unconscious and you're not in an ability to help. So make sure that in this time that what you're doing is you're taking the steps to make sure that you're okay. If that means turning off the radio, if that means turning off the TV, if that means taking a break from social media, so you don't get overwhelmed, because this is overwhelming. This is an overwhelming time. Then do that. And then do something. And I'll leave you with this. In Joshua, I believe 1:1 says, be strong and courageous. The mantle falls to us as young people, as leaders of this generation, as leaders of this nation, because that's what we are, whether you're in a White House or whether I'm at my house or you're at your house. Be strong and courageous. What you're doing in your faith and your faith work and in your faith journey to help bring justice, restorative justice to your community, it's important. And even if you're not on the media and you're not getting the thank yous, it's still important. We're doing God's work, and we rely on him for his help and to make sure that we're doing excellently. So take care of yourselves and be strong and courageous.
Well, I recently learned that there are only three things that you really cannot control in the entire life and entire world. Happens to be your parents, your siblings, and your children. Right? You can't change the fact that's who they are. Well, one thing that we need to really keep this in mind is that we are all children of God, that God has chosen us for some reason, and that we are stuck with one another, regardless of where we come from, how we look, what color skin we are, what social ladder we might be. We are all a family in the Lord. And if we really keep that perspective, and if we live out our faith, then we really have to just love on one another, even with the differences. That we should be able to share our stories and share our perspectives, even some ugly perspectives, and yet still love them for who they are, and to continue to be a family. And to do that, I think we continue to listen to our Heavenly Father, the message and the heart of the Lord, to continue to do the work and to move forward, to do the right thing. So as we continue to share our stories, I think that's exactly what we need to do. We continue to support one another, lift one another up, and that we really just be a one body of Christ.
Well, thank y'all. This was great, and I think that this really does offer a different perspective of election night coverage, and we will continue doing this. We are going to continue doing this with some special guests, but right now we are going to say thank you to Mel and to Jenny and to Jean and to Christian for just a great conversation. And we are so very blessed to be in your presence. So Godspeed tonight, and Mel, aka Gail, is actually going to be staying with us tonight for the remainder of the evening. But we are so blessed to have y'all, and thank y'all so much, and thank y'all for supporting us. We really appreciate it. Thank y'all for supporting the things that we do, and knowing that, excuse me, we are trying to really cultivate a different way of being in the world and being a Christian in the world, because there are so many different ways to do so. So we really thank you, and I hope to see you soon. And God bless. Try not to be so anxious. Keep your mental state healthy, whatever you need to do. and thank you. And we'll see you soon. Oh,
I always like to gather with our friends. Like, I just feel like so our running joke with Lee and I, or I call us our little cohort of group that just came on, we're the Young Adult Justice League. And I just really appreciate each and one of y'all, because I just feel like everyone is awesome in their own ministry and what they're doing in their own individual context. And we can bring it all together to have honest discussion about what we need to do to move the church forward. It just makes my heart leap with joy.
Yeah, it really does. And we can do it in a way that is, I mean, we can talk politics all day long. I can. But we can do it in a way that really speaks to the issues. And then we will now take this time to do our disclaimer again. I'm going to let it scroll. Through here. Ooh. That we are a nonpartisan show. We do not endorse political candidates. We do not endorse political parties. And so I just wanted to make that disclaimer halfway through our show. And this is the segment to where we are inviting people from all over the country, everywhere, to come and talk to us about the issues. and what they are seeing in their own context. And we are really lucky to have a wonderful person coming to join us first. I got to know this person through CPE, and CPE is called Clinical Pastoral Education. And you have to do that to be ordained. And a clinical pastoral education really does prepare you for ministry in all sorts of ways. And so I got to meet Robin. We're going to bring Robin Kimbrough Hayes up here live to join us. Hey, Robin.
Hello, I'm thrilled to be here tonight.
It's so good to see you. And just to give Robin some context, Robin ran for the Democratic primary of Tennessee for U.S. Senate. You did a good job. You did a good job. And but Robin is also a UMC minister and chaplain. And yeah, we'll just Robin, could you just say a little bit about yourself before we talk to you for a little bit?
Well, I just want to say again, thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to share on such a big night in the history of our country. And I'm happy to talk God, theology, and politics. God does care about these things. I am a United Methodist elder. I am the chaplain at Meharry Medical College and special advisor in United Methodist Affairs. And I am very active in my community and decided to run for office on platform on issues that I really value and believe in: health, universal health care, criminal justice reform, making sure that everyone has the right to be who they are. I ran on a platform of women's reproductive rights, ensuring that everyone can live a life free of violence, gun sense legislation, and the fight to secure the rights of the LGBTQ community. So these are just a few of my platform points, and I enjoyed the race, and I'm still connected to these issues. And I've recently picked up, I'm a lawyer as well, and I just recently have decided to do indigent appointments at our court system, because I said, what better way to change the system than to actually confront the system and try to be a resource to help. I'm so glad I did that because our criminal justice system is broken. And we need people in there who are progressive, who care, who have compassion for the folks that come through the court system. So I'm thrilled to be here to mesh who I am as an attorney, a policy person, and who I am in my calling. So I enjoy going to court saying I'm bivocational. I'm a chaplain, I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, Robin does it all. Robin does it all. So yeah, we're so glad that you are here, and I'm glad you're here. And I think and just speak to how your faith does influence your politics and the ways in which you live out your life. I think that would be very helpful for people.
I would. This is a question that I got on the campaign journey. Unfortunately, being clergy, a Christian, was a hurdle that I had to really overcome on the campaign journey, because being a Christian has turned into something very hurtful and harmful to a lot of folks, and had to really do a lot of work with voters on this issue. So I think living out my faith, especially running the race, my work at Meharry, my work as an attorney, means showing compassion and care on all people and valuing the humanity of others. And it's servant leadership. I believe that God wants us God wants us to serve, and when we are served, we serve the people. We serve the people from our heart, and we do it with an unselfish with unselfish motives. The Bible says, blessed is a cheerful giver. And I don't believe that scripture is just talking about giving in church. It's talking about giving of your heart in a very cheerful manner. And for me, that is why I had my passion for Tennessee. It was my way of pouring myself into the people. And true leadership serves and is open to hold themselves accountable for the people. One of my jobs at the Elam Center, and Lee is very aware of this because I actually just started working at the Elam Center as a part of my CP, our clinical pastoral care experience. I work with men and women who are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. And I see firsthand on why drug and alcohol addiction in many situations should be decriminalized. Because I see the trauma of these persons. I'm their chaplain and walk them through various situations they have been through. And no wonder these persons are hooked on drugs. And I've met people who parents gave them drugs at 9 and 12 years old, and we're criminalizing them for something that was introduced to them as a child. So I believe, when I talk about these issues, I'm not just talking about them on the outside, but I'm actually hands-on with these issues. And this is how Jesus was. And isn't that why God sent Jesus into the world? So God could be hands-on with these issues. And for me, that is what leadership is all about. That's what tonight is all about, is that we need folks who are hands-on and not just on the outside pretending like they know or pretending like they care, but are actually talking to the people and empathizing and sharing in and showing compassion on the people who are hurting. When I think about COVID-19 and its effects on poor communities, Black and brown communities, elderly community, all these vulnerable communities who are marginalized, who Jesus was intending on bringing into the fold. You know, if you look at Jesus's ministry. So that's how I'm influenced, is that I want to go and do likewise. When we talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I mean, she did it. She lived this faith in how she ruled and how she talked about issues that were important to her. And this is what we need: leadership that's honest, that has integrity, that is willing to answer questions and be direct and affirms the humanity of all people. And I started my Senate race late, and I believe what happened, the reason why I did as well as I did is because I had that passion, that energy, and people are thirsty for it. And I hope that, and even though I did not make it as far as I wanted to, I'm so grateful that other people looked at my race and they're deciding to run. They're deciding to make change. And that's what it's all about. It's living a life so that you can inspire someone else to live out their calling in the grand scheme of things. So that's the long answer to how my faith intersects with what I do. And it's so neat to transition out of chaplain to lawyer and to have these, to have the skills that go, that are not even legal skills, but these skills that come directly from work. Is that right, Lee? From work that we've done on ourselves, that we can bring to different types of tables and experiences.
That is the truth. Yeah. It's all about this inner work. Yeah, we learned that. But thank you, Robin. Yeah, we have so many people coming in, but we are so thankful for you and your amazing run here in Tennessee. You are inspiring to me, and I do love you. I do miss seeing you every week.
We gotta get together.
And yeah, we got to get together. We live in the same state. We live in the same city. Yes, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your work and sharing the faith in this perspective. It really helps.
Thank you,
Yes,
Robin. It was
thank
nice
you.
seeing you again.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Be blessed. Passion for Tennessee.
Love her. Love her. Mel, do you want to introduce our next guest? Since we've recently added you as a guest host.
Yeah, who is our next person?
It's Laura.
Laura Hyfet? She needs no introduction. She is a wonderful, just wonderful human being. We literally grew up in a way together through the church and have grown not only in knowing how God is calling us in our uniqueness, but in our different passions, in our femininity and all of that. And so,
hello, it's delightful to be with all of you this evening.
yes.
Yeah, it's so good for you to be. We've been trying to. We were like, we got to get Laura on here at some point. We got to get her on here.
I have a lot of opinions, so just someone with opinions.
I just want to point out that, like Laura, nobody knows exactly which state I live in.
I know where Laura stays.
I know all the places, but at the exact moment. So, Laura, share with us.
I live in Tennessee, in the city of Nashville. We could also call it the unceded territory of the Yuchi. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we live in the same city these days. Yeah. Yeah, Laura, and we are inviting people on to really express how faith influences their politics. And we have been saying, we always have to have a disclaimer that Just Talk Live is nonpartisan and we don't endorse a political candidate and all those kinds of things. But we do think, of course, our faith influences our politics. And so how does your faith influence it in this election season?
Yeah, I always think about what's the gospel imperative, and I can get really basic sometimes. So in terms of taking care of the widow and the orphan, making sure, because Jesus was really into this, about how just our society might be for others who are vulnerable or somehow cast aside, whether it's the tax collector or the sex worker. And so I always think whose policies are closest in alignment, and then because there is no perfect candidate for that, to be honest, then which candidate is closest, just so that I know that's the candidate I can most easily influence in organizing to get a little bit closer to what I think is gospel-y.
Can you just right quick say what is like one thing a church can do to just start beginning to organize or think about organizing?
One of the things would be just getting involved in whatever local policy, whether it's the state or the county, has an impact on, for instance, the access that children have to healthcare, or the access that kids in public schools have to affordable food for meals, for lunches and breakfasts. There could be some like really basic stuff. There can be some involvement in whether or not contractors are actually held to affordable housing mandates in their different municipalities. I think there's so many places where churches could honestly very easily insert themselves into, hey, here's a vulnerable population. Turns out we're supposed to care about this. And we can maybe provide for some immediate needs, but then we can also think, how do we prevent these folks from becoming and staying vulnerable, which is more at the policy level.
Awesome. And Laura, right now you're at Vanderbilt Divinity School, right? And I am an alum of Vanderbilt Divinity School. I have a special place in my heart for that place. And it is a place where I learned how to integrate, really did learn how to integrate my faith and how that is reflective in the social issues of our time and in the political sphere. And so I'm wondering if there are young people out here who are looking for some sort of theological education that does reflect that, to really get involved in the community organizing. I'm wondering, we can let you make a pitch for Vandy.
Well, I think what I really want to do is make a pitch for theological education overall in terms of helping us figure out what are the questions that we're asking and how can we engage with communities through the ways that they make meaning, which is oftentimes theological or based in scripture. I have a special place in my heart for Vanderbilt because it's one of the few places I see making a real effort to live into some values and commitments that I think would align with the Gospels. They're not exclusively that because we're interdenominational and there are folks who are not Christian also there. But I think in terms of a place that actually does try to live ethically and acknowledges when it makes mistakes, Vanderbilt can be a really great place for that. I always tell people you can get a good theological education anywhere, but I think it really matters, like, where is your soul going to be best aligned with the spirit of the institution and its values? And again, it's a lot easier to hold an institution that is closer to your values accountable to the things you care about than an institution that's way over here. So
yeah, that's very true.
Be strategic about these things.
Well, again, we are having so many people pop in, and we are so grateful that you came in, just to give us a little nibble of just profoundness. So thank you, Laura, for being with us, and we are so grateful that you are here. And check out Vandy Divinity School. It is a good one. I'm not partisan, but I can be partisan about that.
I'm just saying, since I'm at LPTS now, I'm putting a plug in for LPTS. Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Just saying, and I'm muting.
You can get a good education at many places.
Right.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It was good seeing Laura. I miss seeing her smiling face.
Yes, I did too. And I'm really grateful she's at Vanderbilt. I think she's done such a great thing there. And it was very formative for me being there. So yes. So we are going to introduce our next guest from Nashville, from the Scarrett Bennett Center, and the Reverend Trishna Jean Marie. Welcome to the show. And I don't know you very well. You're a new person to me.
Yes, you're new to me as well. I'm not from Nashville. I'm actually from New Jersey.
Okay.
I'm in Nashville. So, I always try to give my New Jersey props. I'm still a Jersey girl, even though I live in the South.
Yes, I'm glad Robin connected us to each other. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I'm the Reverend Charisma Jean Marie, and I serve as the Director for Racial Justice Ministries at Scarrett Bennett Center in Nashville, Tennessee. Scarrett Bennett is a not-for-profit organization, faith-based organization, and I get to lead the Racial Justice Ministries there. And I'm grateful to lead at a not-for-profit that is also faith-based, because I believe racial justice work is spiritual warfare. We cannot do it with human hands and feet. We need divine intervention to lead us in this work. So those are some of the ways that I show up in the world.
Awesome. Yeah, and during this time together, we are talking about how our faith does influence our decisions and the things that, like, our voting decisions and the people we vote for. during elections, and how our faith really does kind of influence that. And I'm wondering how those things influence you, and some people may not really think that it does. Some people may think that, it's separate, like our faith and our politics need to be separate. And so I wonder what you will say to the people watching that may think that.
Yeah, it very much influences all of who I am, because faith is a life. It's a way of life for me. I borrow from the Muslim tradition. Religion is not something that I do. It's who I am. It's a way of life for me. And how I interpret scripture, I was listening earlier about Vanderbilt Divinity School. That is where I also went to school. I'm an alum there. So shout out to Vanderbilt Divinity School.
I see what's going on here. That's okay. Next election cycle, I'm going to stack up the deck too, Lee. I got it. I'm sorry, Rev. Keep going.
Oh, you're good. And I am a product of Vanderbilt Divinity School that informed also my theological education. And for me, the theological is always political. I read the text, I read the Gospels, I see Jesus' ministry as a political act. And so it is our responsibilities as Christians to be civically engaged. And one of the ways in terms of our understanding of even this moment, I share with people all the time to go vote. It is our responsibility to go vote, but not just go vote, but to understand the impact of your vote. The impact of your vote to the least of these. The least of these is the community that we're called to serve as Christians. And so my vote and your vote is not an individual vote, but it also affects the people that we might never know their names. We might not be in contact with them at all, yet our vote impact them, the least of these. And so when I go to the polls and I look at the ballot and I look at what's on the ballot and who's on the ballot, I'm not just thinking about how it affects my life. I'm thinking about how it affects the lives of those who might not have, right, the kind of privilege, right, to speak for themselves, to vote for themselves, to defend themselves. It is my responsibility as a Christian woman to consider and to vote for the least of these.
We had a conversation, and I'm glad you said this. How do you respond, especially to younger people of color, mainly even those who are Black, who say, now that I have rights, I have a right not to. Like, I have a right not to vote. And usually we say, no vote, don't complain. But, there are a lot of people, even in this election, who are saying, it's okay if you don't vote. And there are a lot of us who are saying, no, baby, you got to. How do you respond to them, or how do you encourage them?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question, and I think it's a complicated question, right? So I pause to the generations ahead that say, how you don't go and vote. People died for you to go vote. It's this shameful act, right, to get people to vote, because the reality is the system is broken, y'all. And until we can claim it and name it and say, listen, the system is broken, and it's time for us to organize and to find folks in our own communities who represent us, to organize, support them, help them to run, to get them to the table so we can shift the system, shift the power. The reality is many people, not just young people, do not believe in voting because the system is broke. So I think it's important first to acknowledge that the system is broke. And here are ways that I believe we can speak to a broken system, right? Is, again, to organize in our community, to support those in our community who stand for us, to get them to the table. The other piece is this. Here's the reality. When you don't vote, you're voting, right? That vote goes towards the candidate that you least support. Right. And so while the system is broke, it's still a system that's in place, right, that selects the next leaders, that select those who will make decisions on behalf of you and I. And so when I don't vote, what I do is silence myself in the moment. And I just don't believe, as a Christian, as a leader, as someone who trusts and believes in justice, who work and live towards justice, that it is for me to be silent in this hour. And so it really all depends on how you see and understand your role, your voice in the moment. And I don't believe those of us who love justice, who believe in justice, who work towards justice, it's for us to be silent in this hour. It is for us to speak as loud as we can, even to a broken system.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Trishna Jean Marie. And I didn't realize we were Vandy alums. So it is wonderful to meet you. I did not know this, I promise. But I still live in Nashville, so hopefully one day we will get to meet. But thank you so much for being on with us. Being amongst us and blessing us with your words. So we really appreciate it. We really appreciate you being here. Yes.
Have a great one.
See you soon.
Bye.
Now, Destiny, I think one of your close colleagues is next.
Okay, my people are next. Okay, cool. So I would love to introduce this next person to come on. His name is Kieran Young. He does a lot of work in the Northeast region of the country in Pennsylvania, where I'm from. Very not only political, but civically engaged. And I will let him come on and share his narrative at that time.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Karen. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? And as we have stated over and over again, we are nonpartisan, so we ask you to keep it the same way, but just talk about your campaign. We see that's on your shirt.
So I'm Kieran Young. I actually work for a nonpartisan organization called Black Voters Matter. But outside of doing races and political work in Pennsylvania, DC, Maryland, and New York, I've done states like West Virginia and Texas as well. So I have a lot of political experience around the country. But right now I'm working for Black Voters Matter. We were out today covering polling locations in Western Pennsylvania, and doing election protection work. So as we're about 20 minutes from the polls closing in Pennsylvania. So I've been sitting here watching a little bit of television, trying to see what the numbers are across the country.
Nice. Thank you, Karen. And why is it important for you to be on this campaign at this time for Black Voters Matters?
So, I mean, when we talk about the previous election results from 2016, in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Black voters really were the difference in the election. So if we would like to create change in our country, we really need Black people, especially, to mobilize and get out to vote. And it's not necessarily about who they vote for, but just about exercising that right and using that right that has been so hard fought for.
So I'm going to ask the question that I asked before. So what do you say, or how do you respond to young Black voters who say, it's my right to not vote?
Yeah, it's your right, but it's also very stupid. There have been people who have fought and died for the right to vote. Black men didn't get the right to vote until I can't remember what the exact date was. I think it was in the 30s or the 40s, and Black women didn't get the right to vote until the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. So we had the right to vote. Black men did before Black women. So I'm not sure about those dates exactly. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there have been people who have suffered without representation and without a voice. So for you to decide to not use your voice and exercise your right, I just think it's stupid.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. And then also, as you may not know, Just Talk Live is a faith and justice talk show geared towards young adults. And everyone on the screen right now is a young adult. So what is your message to young adults in America right now that you would want to portray, not only just for Black Voters Matters, but you as a young adult in America?
So I do a lot of work in the electoral space, and I'm very familiar with what the voter file looks like in a lot of the major markets around the country. And slowly but surely, millennials and Gen Z as well are becoming a majority of the voters. So not using your right to vote stops the change that we want to see, generationally. We're trying to create generational change that will alter the course of our country. And for us to do that, we all need to band together and use our vote collectively to push our politicians to do more for us.
Yeah, get it together, young people. Let's get
Right.
it together. Yes.
That is an interesting perspective, and that is something that I definitely lifted up during my races back in Harrisburg on school board and city council. But a colleague of ours had told us a couple episodes ago what is needed as a formula, so to speak, for a political movement or a social justice movement or a church movement is young adults, women, and people of faith. What do you have to say about that statement? Again, in order for a movement to be full or whole or to take momentum, you need young adults, which we are, people of faith, which we are, and women, which Mel and I are. But what do you say about that statement?
So I would agree with that. It's about building a coalition and working together to accomplish common goals, finding synergy and working together to accomplish things that benefit all of the people in the coalition. I agree with the statement 110%.
And lastly, before we let you go, do you have any parting words of what young people can do to reconcile this country moving forward?
So just getting involved, over the past couple of years outside of working for Black Voters Matter, I have, operated a political consulting firm mostly on the East Coast. I've done everything from congressionals to mayorals to I did a United States Senate race actually in Texas. So, just getting involved in campaigns, getting your feet wet and volunteering, and even running for office, going to some of the trainings that are being held by a lot of different organizations around the country. If you're interested in running for office, there are a lot of people out there who want to help younger people run, like myself. I've run before, and I know the pitfalls that come along with it. Destiny, I know you have as well. So, you know, encouraging more young people to run, to become civically engaged, to start 501c3s, to start 501c4s, and to use the influence that we have to harness power and organize power and money. I actually, before I got into politics, I did some work with the Gamaliel Foundation and the Pennsylvania Interfaith Impact Network. And their model was to organize churches, to organize their people, and to organize money to create positive change. And that was a lot of direct action. That's a lot of lobbying. That's a lot of volunteer work. So it's not all necessarily running for public office. Some of it is just showing up, organizing, and holding people's feet to the fire in order to get the change or to accomplish the changes that you'd like to see.
Well, thank you, Karen, for being with us. I might go live tonight on my Facebook page. I might invite you on, to do something. But we're going to move on to our next guest. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so now our next guest, this is we're just getting them in and out here. So this is really great because I am inviting on someone who Destiny is in charge of the Young Adult Volunteer Program. And I was a Young Adult Volunteer, and so was this next guest. And it is so good to welcome Ashley Fair to our show.
Hi, everyone.
It's so good to see you. Tell the people a little bit about yourself and what you're doing, because you are really in the midst of all this, aren't you?
Yeah, I am calling from a boiler room, a campaign boiler room, which just means the hub for the night. So there's a lot of activity going on around. But yeah, hi, thank you. It's good to see you again, Lee, and nice to meet you, Mel and Destiny. So I've been working on this election cycle for over 500 days. from various levels, starting with the presidential campaign, going to gubernatorial, now working with state house races. And it's just been a wild year. This is my fifth campaign cycle. So it's just been something I have never seen before. But yeah, it's been incredible. It's just been absolutely incredible. And the turnout we've been seeing today and the way impactful this year. And I'm grateful to be on the call with you all.
Yeah. And yeah, speak to that a little bit, because it's not every day that you see an ordained minister be involved in the in campaign work. So I wonder, yeah, speak to that, like how your calling has influenced that and vice versa, because I know that would be of interest to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think before the primary, I'm not sure now, but I definitely know before the primary, I think it was the only ordained clergy working on a presidential campaign, which, yeah, has brought some challenges, but also has been really incredible. I mean, like I was saying before, I think the way that people of faith are trained to be in relationships with people really impacts organizing, and talking about particularly church communities, because that's my context, and how we organize people and how we build relationships has really, I think, benefited me in working on campaigns. I know for me, last fall, when I had the opportunity to jump on a campaign, I really saw it as an obligation. I feel like as people of faith, we have an obligation to care for our community in the way that we can. And quite frankly, we are the ones who know our community best. And so it's our responsibility to know what our community needs are and to act on that. And so when I had the opportunity to jump on, I took it. And I've just seen incredible things. Today is a really wild day. I know a lot of people are bringing a lot of tension and anxiety, and I definitely name and hold that. And I also think, for myself and the inside, I'm celebrating a lot today because I have just seen so many people show up. So many people show up over these past 500 days that I've been working to make a difference in their community by volunteering, by making calls, which that's the hardest thing to do. I know that. And during COVID times, that seems like the only thing we can be doing. But knocking doors when we could, talking to strangers and just listening and hearing people and urging people, especially our leaders, to make a change. I mean, that's people power, and people power is power. That's where it is. And quite frankly, I think that's church. Doesn't really matter where it is or who it is. That's the call that Jesus gave us all. And so when we're following that call, we act on behalf of our neighbors and siblings. And it means we need to organize to be able to reach out to people and neighbors on our street that we don't know. I mean, how many faith communities cold call or knock on doors in their neighborhood and ask how someone is doing or what they need? I mean, I think quite frankly, this is the way that people get involved in campaigning and in politics is really church. I mean, we've learned a lot about church in 2020, but church is on a neighbor's front porch. That's church. Church is on the phone with someone, talking about their diabetes medication, getting to know their student loan payments, finding out what's been happening in their neighborhood. That's church. So to me, it's really, the connection is very apparent. It's just another way of doing church.
Yeah. So since you've been doing campaigns for a while, we often know that people show up more for the big ones than the small ones. How do you begin to encourage believers, non-believers, people to start getting involved in the smaller, we call them smaller elections, but we realize these smaller ones have a larger impact. But how do you start, either in your pastoral role or just as someone who's worked on campaigns, getting people, and especially young people, interested in the local and the midterm elections and smaller elections?
Yeah, I think some of this is getting to know where and who makes decisions, because I don't know about any of you, but when I was in elementary school and middle school and high school, I never really learned civics. So it was difficult for me to learn about who do I go to about my recycling in my city. Like what does the governor actually do? And so, yeah, to your point, like a lot of what we might call smaller elections are actually super impactful ones. And oftentimes the ones that make the most difference on an issue that means the most to us. And I think for young people, I mean, I just have to say like a huge thank you, because young people have really been the change makers over the past 3 years that I've been involved, especially young people of color and young women who are, you know, dealing with environmental racism and voter suppression in communities. I mean, all it takes to be an organizer is have a friend. And once you have a friend, you can make an impactful difference in your community by getting to know like who's on your city council, who are the people that make those decisions. And when you have passion and an issue, you get to know those people pretty well and find out like the thing that really makes a difference in terms of how to get our political leaders to listen to us is pressure. Always pressure. And 2 people is pressure, let me tell you. Doesn't matter what level of office they hold, 2 people is pressure for an elected official. So yeah, I would just encourage people to get to know what's happening in their neighborhoods and find a friend and get to know the people who are responsible for whatever is the issue that's happening in your community and whatever the needs are in your community, and let them know that you're there and you're watching and you're going to hold them accountable.
Mel, I'm so grateful that you asked that question. Ashley, thank you for divulging that in a larger spectrum, because it is the local elections that really touch us on a day-to-day basis that we don't understand. And yet so many of us only come out for the presidential election. And so thank you for really lifting that up and expanding upon it and lifting up why local elections matter. And I'm going to kick it over to Lee.
Well, thank you for being here, Ashley. And thank you for your work. That's just to see to see an ordained minister doing the work of God the way you are doing is really inspirational. And thank you for what you do. And good luck tonight on whoever candidate you are supporting. So good luck. And blessings on all anxiety, and hope you get some rest for the next couple of days. So blessings to you.
Thank you. See you all on the other side.
Yes, thank
Bye.
you. It was really good to see her. She's doing awesome stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you would have told us like what year she served and where.
I can't. Well, she served my year. She served my year, but
where?
2011, 2012, I think.
Okay. Well,
we'll figure that out later. Yeah, New Orleans. She served in New Orleans. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley, for coming on. If you're a young adult who would like to dig deeper into Christian formation around social justice issues, we invite you to apply to the YAB program. Reach out to me, Destiny, for more info. And I'll kick it back over to Lee to invite on our next guest.
Well, we kind of have a surprise guest to end this all.
Yeah.
We didn't know that this particular person was going to show up. We just kind of sent them.
Guest too.
Yes, we kind of sent them the link. But this person has been in the polling. He was a poll worker. He was like working the polls. And so welcome to voter polls.
Older Christians who might get
the voter polls. He was at the voter polls. And so we are going to welcome Guthrie Grace Fitzsimmons, who has been a regular guest on the show for the past. It's been we've been doing this a long time now. So we are so grateful that you're here. Tell us about your experience working the voter polls.
Well, thank you for having me back on. I'm so excited to join this election night special. And I wasn't sure if I would be able to join because I never have worked as an election official before. It was a lot of, I'm not a morning person, and waking up at 3:30 this morning to show up at 4:30 to get everything ready for voters to show up at 6 was early, but I am so energized. Just seeing so many people. We did this thing where we clapped every time a first-time voter came in, and they were like, I'm voting for the first time. We'd all cheer. And it was such a it was also very amazing because I never thought about volunteering for an election before, but they put out this call because of the pandemic. A lot of the older folks that usually, staff the polls couldn't this year because of COVID. And so there were all these people in our 30s who never worked an election before. And we were all like, yeah, democracy. So yeah, it was there were like 70 of us, and it was a really fun time and a great time just to like be excited about people voting. So it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I've been seeing that there've been, at some point they were saying that because of COVID, like a lot of older, more retired people wouldn't be working. But what was the kind of age vibe of people that were working where you were?
There were a few old timers who'd like done it before, but of the probably 70 to 80 people at my location, I would say 90% of them were first time people in their 30s or 40s.
Oh, wow.
Who just heard, I had this team, I had this team of 5 of us who were working on like problem cases of like people that weren't on the rolls, or they had requested an absentee ballot here in Kentucky. You could request an absentee ballot, but then for a lot of people, it like never showed up. And so they came to vote in person. And the 5 of us had never done this before, but we were like, yeah, let's do it. We were all like young people who were jazzed about stepping up. A lot of protective equipment, a lot of hand sanitizer and face shields and masks and everything to make it safe. And yeah, people rose to the occasion and were like really enthusiastic, even early in the morning. There was this food truck that came by and was giving out free food to people at the polls. Yeah, and while Kentucky has already been called in the presidential election, I hate this idea that you're in a red state or a blue state. It's like every state, no matter where you are, no matter what race it is, we should be excited about voting. And that doesn't matter if Kentucky was the first state called in the presidential election already. It was exciting to vote.
Yeah. And did working kind of give you a new, not just joy, but sense of how important this is that maybe you could share? What does, because sometimes, you work behind the scenes of something and it can either dishearten you because you're like, oh gosh, this is a really messed up system, or it can empower you. So, and it sounds like you got empowered and like excited to continue to do your civic duties. But yeah, just share.
Let me do a big caveat, which is we need same-day voter registration everywhere in this country. So it was hard to be the person that had to tell voters, you're not registered to vote, you can't register the same day, you're not on the rolls, and to send them away basically was the hardest part of the day. And yet to see so many first-time voters and the people that we had to turn away, sadly, we registered them to vote so that they could vote in future elections. And just to see so many, and the diversity I thought was really amazing of people that were coming out and voting, and the first time voters, the college voters who were having a say. Like I've seen reports about young people really turning out all across the country, which is really exciting. And yeah, I think you might expect during a pandemic and during a time of I think doubt in our country's future and raising a lot of important issues, and some more apathy. Like that's, people might be like, oh, nothing matters, voting doesn't change anything, all this. But I've seen the opposite, which is that voting is not the only thing that matters. Like our civic responsibility is every day of the year in the streets. And also, but it's not, that's not to discount the ballot box. So I was really pleased with what I saw. I'm a little delirious though, having been there for 14 hours today.
Yes, and we are so grateful that you're here, even after all that. Like, that is amazing. Yeah, I sent Guthrie the link, and I was like, if you want to show up, you can. Here's the link, and I'm really glad you did. But before we let you go, and maybe let you go to rest a little bit, during this whole time, we have been really saying, like, this election is not going to be the cure for what is going on right now. No matter what happens, there's still going to be a lot of work to do. And so I wonder, and we will plug that Guthrie Grace Fitzsimmons is the author of Just Fate, Reclaiming Progressive Christianity, correct? That's the right title. And has been having these kinds of conversations with us. But what would you say to kind of push us forward as we close out this episode? For what is next for all of us? That's a big question.
What's next is no one election is going to change our country completely or reorient our entire society. What's going to do that is young people and people of all ages having their consciousness being awakened to care about the people God cares about, which are the most vulnerable, the oppressed, the people who our government denies their dignity. And so we need to always, while each election's important and we have imperfect choices of who to support each time, and no politician is our savior, yet we still vote. I think long term we need to think about culture change and how we build this kind of moral awakening in our country, which I'm so glad y'all are doing through Just Talk.
Every Tuesday. We're here
every Tuesday.
at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. But Guthrie, thank you for thank you for working today. The voter polls. We're so grateful for you. That's awesome.
Oh, it was so fun. I encourage everyone to do it. If you've ever thought about it, next time get out and work an election. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, I think I will the next time. I think I am going to do that. But we're grateful that you're here. Go get some rest. And yes, blessings. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Y'all, what a night. What an evening. Oh, what a night.
Oh, what a night.
What a night. We are so grateful for whoever has watched this 2-hour, this 2-hour thing. And thank you, my co-hosts. Mel, you joined us. We're so grateful for you. Destiny, do y'all have any last comments before we go?
Oprah, please go first.
I would say, well, my usual comment would have been vote, wear a mask, but we're past that now. For those who are watching, I hope you were able to wrestle with something that resonated with you, have your brain percolating about something on how we can move forward, not only as people of faith, but as a country. And I'm very grateful for my colleagues here, and also for the others who joined us on the young adult roundtable to have that important conversation around politics and faith, and also for the special guest appearances that popped in throughout the night. So thank you to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I know it's a little longer than usual, but hopefully you were able to hear a different perspective than your average local election news.
Yeah, I would say hopefully this was a welcomed break from what is ahead. Maybe may this and these conversations be kind of like a mental respite to say that there's hope, that you're not alone, that there are other people in different places across this country who are doing the work and who are working in their faith and in their belief in all humanity. And so this fight feels lonely sometimes, but it's just a joy. I always like being on here because it just reminds me really that I'm not alone, and there are others who are in the fight. And I just want to note that you guys have had almost as many episodes as the years that I'm celebrating. So we're like birthday buddies in a way. You know, you guys are coming up on like 40 episodes, right? So, yeah.
We're getting there.
Yeah, so
we're getting there with that money.
I know.
Yeah.
So kudos to you and Destiny for just starting this platform, because this is the platform the church has needed for so long.
Well, thank you, Mel. And to all those people out there, I will reiterate that this is a tough time. And if you feel like you can't talk to someone or your family, and the holidays are coming up, and that's going to be rough anyway with the pandemic. Yeah, like Mel said, you are not alone. And it's okay sometimes that if you need to take a break, if you need to take a little breath, that's okay. But know that you have people out here who are with you that you can contact. Feel free to contact us and let us just so you know that you're not by yourself. And everybody out there who's voting, if you haven't voted, I mean, the voting polls are closed on the East Coast, I think.
8 p.m. It's a wrap.
And it's a wrap. But everywhere else, if you can still vote, go out and vote. And
stay in line.
Stay in line.
People cannot kick you out. Stay in line.
Stay in line. And also, I will say, I challenge people to read the Bible. I read scripture, because there are things in there that you'll never realize that tells us how we should be in the world, and who we are to side with in our everyday walk in our lives. And so read the Old Testament has those stories. The New Testament has those stories, that we are to side with those who are poor, who are marginalized, who are oppressed, who are sick, and who need help and who need care. That is what our faith teaches us. So go out there and learn. Read books. There's so many things out there, and let us know. But I'm so grateful for you two. I'm grateful to be in ministry with you. And for whoever is watching, we are grateful for you too, and hope you got something out of this. So to the election 2020 episode, we are signing off, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a wrap.
Ladies, gentlemen, people of God, children of God, siblings, we are wrapping it up. So,
and just to close, we do not support any political candidate. We are nonpartisan. You see it scrolling below you. We did a good job tonight, you all.
Yes, we did. So blessings, everyone. Blessings.
Bye.